Hello, everyone, and welcome to Go the Distance podcast series. My name is Sadie, and you can find my social media links at milehighradio.com /go-the-distance. Thank you to Lynn Burnett and Mile High Radio for making all this possible. Today I will be talking about how to express strong emotional reactions while maintaining respect. So everywhere we go, there are things that we agree with and things that we don't. And we have to react in a way that shows people who we really are. So if there's a problem and something's bothering me, the way I react to that shows people how I'm feeling inside. And so that is who we are to that person. That becomes who they expect and how they expect us to act. So when there's something that bugs me, I feel the need to tell people how I'm feeling. So generally, I do that because I want to make a change. That wanting someone to be calm or more polite motivates me to want to tell them how I'm feeling, because if you tell someone how it makes you feel, they can't really argue with that. That's your emotions and your feelings. And so by expressing that, you're giving them a chance to actually think about what you're feeling and your perspective and where you're coming from. And we all need to communicate more, as opposed to just having these quick, rash reactions to situations. Everyone has an opinion on the situation that's happening, so by reacting in ways that are appropriate and keep everyone else feeling safe and still like they can be a participant and part of the group, then you're demonstrating that you expect people to respect you and that you give respect back. That's one of my classroom expectations, is I expect respect. If you do choose to react in a way that shows like anger or frustration, it's because generally there's so much emotion behind what you're feeling that you're communicating using strong emotions. And those emotions sometimes cause us to say things quickly or say things without thinking about them. And then we don't really take the time to consider how what we're saying will be perceived by the person hearing it. Thanks, Justin. What's up? Welcome. Thanks for being in the chat. Generally, if someone's like really frustrated with me or upset with me and is, expressing that in a rash way or in an angry or frustrated way, I tend to feel, I almost feel like shut down, either like because I feel guilty or I feel shameful because something I did or said caused somebody to feel that way. And that's not a good way to think, because in a way I take responsibility for how someone else is feeling. But also, instead of just like taking responsibility for it, I choose to like give myself time to think about how can I avoid that next time, because if that person's having such a strong reaction to something, obviously there's something going on bigger than what I just said or did, because I don't react that harshly when something happens, but I always try to think, how would I avoid this the next time? How could I help this person to feel more calm? Like, could I have said that differently? That was my tone demeaning or rude? Did I forget to use my manners? Was I, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes those little things can cause people to react negatively or less positively. The same thing as negative. But yeah, and so I try to always be aware. And sometimes it's not anything I did or said or how I said it. It's something just purely going on with that person. But it's interesting to um, see how the person calms down after you react that way, because they don't have anything to continue to be mad at because you're not getting mad back. It doesn't become like a back and forth argument. It just de-escalates and you just talk about it. um, when someone is reacting in a negative way or strong, like really strongly to something, we can support people can support other people by being positive and helping others with problem solving. So like, instead of, if someone's like saying, oh, today was the worst day ever, all these bad things happened, I like to be the person who says like, oh, well, what's one good thing that happened today? There had to be like, one good thing out of all these bad things. So trying to be positive when other people are being negative can help people see like, oh yeah, I am being really negative. I should, take a step back and, as what's that old saying, smell the roses. I also try to describe behavior and how it's impacting the situation or the interaction. I try to be purely descriptive without being judgmental. So I try to just describe what happened without saying you did this, or saying that somebody else was, like, blaming it, kind of thing. Like, instead of blaming or judging people, I try to just say like, this happened and then this happened and you reacted this way and this person reacted that way, and because of that, this happened. Justin says, look at the problem, but focus on the solution. What we magnify will manifest. It's so true. It's so true, because it's like, there's a term in psychology and it's called the looking glass self. And it's just like, who you see yourself as, or who other people see you as, who you present yourself as, that's who you are and that's who you become. And so you have to be aware of how you're presenting yourself. I also think it's really important to be honest about how we feel, because and in the moment too, because people can understand how they're impacting others when you share those emotions right away, instead of like always having your poker face on. You leave people wondering like, oh, how did they feel about how I said that, or what I just did, or whatever. Well, if you show them with your body language and your emotional, like the way you talk back or the way that you look at them, then they're going to understand. Like, so if you give someone like this little look like, huh, why did you just do that? Like, then they get it. They're like, oh, that made them upset. Um, there's another old saying, honesty is the best policy. And I do really believe that, because sometimes emotions take over processes in the brain, and that, instead of like using your higher level thinking, you're now going to back down to just like a purely emotional, sort of instinctually driven reaction. And that kind of thought process is hard to kick out of. Like, once you're kind of thinking that way, it just kind of keeps going and going, and then finally something happens where you're like, oh yeah, right, I'm like freaking out and there's no reason or whatever. um When our thoughts are emotionally driven, we can easily forget about how others feel. Um, so yeah, I say even better than reacting to an intense situation, um, when you're able to anticipate it, put measures into place before the anger or frustration happens. So if you see someone starting to like look agitated, like kind of like their facial expressions change, their body language changes, they start becoming, they start saying like little one word like answers. Well, before those things happen, start like, I don't know, depend on the situation, you have to kind of figure out what's making them upset and angry and help diffuse it before it happens. If it's, well, for kids with autism, it could be like your tags on your clothing, or it could be like the squeaking of somebody like rocking on their chair, or somebody like tapping on the desk while they're doing their work, or it could be somebody picking on them, or like talking to them when you're trying to do your work, or it could be any little thing that just keeps happening, and then the person gets angry enough to react in a way that gets them in trouble more than the person who's doing something that's bothersome. And if you just would say like, hey, I have a really hard time concentrating when you're constantly talking to me, then the person has to realize like, oh, okay, I'm influencing this person in a way that they don't appreciate, and that's not going to get a person any friends, or that doesn't help things go smoothly. So it's good to be aware of how you're influencing the group. For myself, I like to have like a warm thermos of tea, or like a hot cup of coffee or something like that. I just like taking sips on that. And if I'm like feeling frustrated or overwhelmed or something, sometimes I just like take a minute to go over, grab some tea and have a little drink, and then take the minute to think or reflect on the situation and try to problem solve around it. And I also take a lot of deep breaths. I catch myself doing it. I don't even always do it intentionally, but I've said this before too on a different episode, but I just take deep breaths. Who cares if it's loud and people hear you? Sometimes you just need a minute to give your body more oxygen, get your brain more oxygen. If you're starting to think about something, and then your brain's going to be using oxygen, so it needs more. So it's probably good to take a deep breath before you start going like deep in thought. It's also really important to take everyone's perspective into account when you're looking at a situation. It's important to make sure that everyone feels validated and feels like they have had a say in the situation, because there's always like that one thing that drives you nuts, but no one else really seems to care. But if everyone just ignores that because they don't care, they're like, oh, I don't mind that I'll just let that go, then that can be overbearing for a person who really is bothered by that. I want to share a quote from a textbook. It's called Positive Child Guidance, written by Darla Ferris Miller, page 205, I mean. So the textbook shares a little story, which I'm not going to take the time to read, but then it also reflects on the story. So I'm just going to read the little written blurb here. Paragraph. Much of Benny's aggression probably stemmed from the stress and pressure he was encountering in his daily life. His mother, Virginia, had a lot of frustration building up in her as she tried to survive financially and emotionally as a single parent, a working mother of a toddler, and as a student. She felt frustration in her efforts to be a perfect mother while also trying to deal with her own personal and social needs. Benny caught some of her stress like a contagious illness. He did not know why he felt so tense and stubborn all the time. He did not know why, and he did not know how to make the feelings go away. Stress is a very real crisis for many children and families today. Children can absorb stress unknowingly from their parents and caregivers and develop stress symptoms directly from their own lifestyles. Today, there are children who, from earliest childhood, spend their days going from classroom to tutoring to individual lessons to social events, virtually every day from dawn to dusk, whatever the cause of stress. Its symptoms often include inappropriate behavior, along with health, appetite, and concentration problems. And this really is a reality for a lot of people in our world right now. And stress is just like eating up the happiness in the world. And we just have to slow down and say, well, yeah, it's good to work at a fast pace and it's good to work hard and get things done, but it's also necessary to take time for yourselves. And when you're at the bottom of the food chain, there's no time left over to take for yourself, because the amount of money that you make at that level is so minimal. And so in order to have the nice things that everyone else gets satisfaction in having, you have to work so much that you don't have time for yourself, and you don't have time to think about yourself and take care of yourself. And that's how stress starts, and you just keep working and working and working, and it just takes over everything that you do. And it's just, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to stop it. There's always stress. I still suffer with stress, but when we all work together and we all recognize the fact that we're leaving a group of people behind and out in our planning, that's, I guess, when we would really make a difference. All right, so I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you for joining in the chat, and we'll see you next time.